I came across something this week that sent me back to one of my favorite topics. So this week, let's revisit humility. Shalom, my friends. Yes, indeed, humility. Such an important value that the prophet Micah famously reminds us after telling us that God wants three things from us, and the first two things are to be just and kind. He tells us not simply to walk with God, but to do so humbly. It's also a great compliment to Moses when he is called the most humble man on earth. So let's dig a little deeper into the subject of humility this week, thanks to, as I said, something I happened to read a few days ago. It's a quote from John Ruskin, who said that the first test of greatness is one's humility. But what caught my attention was the end of the quote where he explained that by humility, he didn't mean doubting one's own abilities, but rather, he said, quote, really great men have a curious feeling that the greatness is not in them, but through them, and they see something divine in every other person. Now that struck me powerfully. I just heard the story of two of my friends whose paths had crossed just this past week. One friend, who's a physician, happened to see the other friend as a doctor for the first time. And they made the connection that the three of us were friends. So later, one of the fellows called me to tell me how wonderful the doctor friend had treated him, how much he liked him. And I wasn't at all surprised because I know my physician friend's heart. And he's the type of physician who feels that he's providing the medical knowledge and the hands to carry out what needs to be done, but at the same time he's acting as God's agent, as God's hands, because God is the ultimate source of healing. I don't think anyone would want to go to a doctor whose humility was expressed in the statement, I barely graduated from medical school and I'm a pretty rotten doctor. But the kind of humility that tells a doctor that he or she is a conduit through which flows a healing for which credit goes to God, that's something different, and I think that's what Ruskin was talking about. You know, it's the role of the prophet to be God's mouthpiece. Perhaps there are roles for those of us who live long after the age of prophecy has ended. Perhaps it has always been God touching our lives in veiled ways, with music through a Mozart, or with a cure through a caring provider. Who knows? Perhaps there's even a little occasional divine spark in these videos. And if that's the case, the credit definitely goes to God, not to me. And that's where I think I'm going to leave things this week, my friends. That a beautiful way to live with humility is to live with the awareness that ultimately all blessings flow from God, and it is to God to whom we should be thankful. Now, the usual YouTube housekeeping items. If you enjoyed the video or maybe even learned something from it, give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments box. Those who want to support us as patrons can do so at patreon.com, linked in the description box. And finally, as I write this, we now have 771 subscribers. If you're not one of them, help to push us over 800. It's free and it couldn't be easier. Just click on my face right over here and be sure to push the bell so you'll get all notifications. You can also watch our last video by clicking on its icon right over there. As ever, until next time, Shabbat Shalom.